it to the point of allowing it to guide his actions. Although we all acknowledge the fact that at times David made a mistake, he lost the conscience of God and sinned against the Lord, and was equally punished by the Lord. But he was conscious of this presence. Let me tell you, something about this consciousness that David had. There was a time he and some Israelites and soldiers, were being pursued by the Philistines. He knew so much about the presence of God with him that he wouldn't take any action without asking him. First of all, he asked him, when will I go against them? When do I go against them? When I go? And the Lord will tell him. At one time the Lord told him, say, when you hear that was in the middle of the night, and when you hear the feet, the marching on the top of the mulberry trees, then you go against them. And it happened. When it happened, David went after them and he slaughtered them. What was that sign? That was the time when the angelic army were marching. They were ready to go. At that time, we went to go destroy his enemies. He knew something about the presence of God, the power of this presence. Very, very important. So, now it is established from what we read, the scripture we read, that, and many other scriptures, like Jesus said, I am with you till the end. He said, lo, I am with you till the end of the age. I am with you. In the last chapter of the book of Matthew, it says, or 28, or it was 28 to the last, he talked about it, about how he will be with us till the end of the age. So now, let's say this. God is everywhere. He sees all things and he knows all things. However, he does not make this presence noticeable at all times to people. Because of the carnal nature of a human being, people depend so much on their five senses. So they may not be able to see God or hear him or touch or feel him all the time, because the awareness of that presence is beyond the five senses. It's beyond the five senses. So you can't see him or hear him or touch him or feel him all the time. I know of one man of God, I think that's our father in the faith, who has gone to be with the Lord now, Brother Oral Roberts. I think I read in one of his materials that he said he heard the audible voice of God 97 times while he was alive in his lifetime. Audibly, God spoke to him. The Lord said, he said, with Moses, I'll speak to him face to face, but with other prophets, some of them he said he will speak to them in dark speeches. So that's one thing, So you can hear God audibly, and Jesus has manifested to many people physically. You can see him, but there are many, he doesn't show up like that all the time. He doesn't show up. You don't see him that way all the time. And he doesn't perform signs to show he's around all the time. But you can be aware that he's with you and he's watching you all the time and at all times. Very, very important. Very important. Very important. He never lied to anybody. Now let me digress a little and let me show you something, about the presence of God, with you. He's watching you. Let me try to compare it with something we know, from a human example. Something from a human example. There's this experiment that was performed in the US. In the US in the 1940s. I think that was in 1945. Okay, 1940. It was in 1940. Okay, let me not make a mistake now. 1940. So, like I said, let me digress a little. Use an example, something based on common sense, what we can see. Because Paul himself, somewhere in the scripture, I think in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 14, it says, does not even nature teach you that if a man should have long hair, is a shame unto him? That means nature can teach you some things that are divine or spiritual. So now it says, this experiment that was done in the US. They talk about a company known as the Hawthorne Works company, an electrical company. The management of this company invited some researchers to do an experiment in the company. They wanted to see what would be the impact or the effect of improving the lighting conditions in the factory, to see what effect it will have on the productivity of the workers. Now, this was done. When they did the experiment, they found out that whether the light was increased or decreased, the workers, their performance was excellent. The productivity was too good. They did very well. Throughout the period that this experiment continued, because they were under the eyes of people who were watching them, they excelled. Now, when the experiment was finished and the researchers left